Hey, I'm Alex, and today we're going to work on the math interpreter problem from PSET 1 of CS50's Introduction to Programming with Python. Let's begin by taking a look at the problem description. Python already supports math, whereby you can write code to add, subtract, multiply, or divide values and even variables. But let's write a program that enables users to do math even without knowing Python. In a file called interpreter.py, implement a program that prompts the user for an arithmetic expression and then calculates and outputs the result as a floating point value formatted to one decimal place. Assume that the user's input will be formatted as XYZ, with one space between X and Y and one space between Y and Z, wherein X is an integer, Y is a plus, minus, an asterisk, or a slash for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and Z is an integer. For instance, if the user inputs 1 space plus space 1, your program should output 2.0 because remember we have to format to one decimal place. Assume that if Y is slash, then Z will not be 0 because you know that in math you cannot divide by 0, but in this case we don't care about this because whenever Y is equal to slash for dividing, Z will never be 0. Note that just as Python itself is an interpreter for Python, so will your interpreter.py be an interpreter for math. Before we begin, let's set some space for our code. So first we're going to create a folder, then a file, and we're going to start writing some code. So I'm already in my PSET 1 tutorial folder, and I'm going to, you don't have to necessarily have such a folder. So I'm going to create a new directory, make a new directory, which is going to be called interpreter. And inside of it, I want to change my directory to the newly created folder, which is interpreter. So cd interpreter, cd for change directory to interpreter. And once I'm in, I would like to create a Python file with the same name. So I'm going to say code interpreter.py. Don't forget the extension. And now I have my code set, my IDE set up, and I'm ready to start writing some code. So the first thing we would like to do, as always, is take the user's input. So how do we take the user's input? Well, we use the input method. It's very self-explanatory. And inside of our brackets, we can write some kind of a prompt for the user so that they can know what exactly we're expecting. Let's take a look at the original prompt given by the CS50 staff. It's expression colon. Okay, let's go back. We have our quotes and we can write expression colon and a space to make it more clear. Okay, now once we have the user's input, we would like to store it in some kind of a variable, right? So that we can later manipulate it to extract some values, operands, etc. So let's create a variable, which is going to be called expression. Of course, you can choose a different name. I just think that's the most descriptive one, expression or math expression if you would like to. And it equals this thing. The answer of the user. And let's just come and quickly print expression to ensure that it's so good. So I'm going to say Python interpreter.py in order to execute the file, and I'm going to say 1 + 1. And we just say the same thing printed, but we've successfully stored the user's answer in our expression variable. Once we have it, let's take a look at the structure of our expression. We have XYZ split by a space, right? We have X space, Y space, Z. For instance, 1 space plus space 1. So if that's our expression, how can we extract the three main parts here? the first operand, the second operand, and the operator. Well, the easiest way to achieve this is to split the expression by a space, because we know that a space is what separates each part, each element of the expression from the others. Let's try to do this. Let's say elements equals expression dot split. That's the method we use in Python. So we're splitting this expression into 3 parts, and our separator is an empty space, right? So let's come here, print this, and I'm going to explain it once more. Elements. I'm going to run my program, say 1 plus 1, and we see a list. In this list, we have successfully split this expression into 3 parts. We have our first operand, which is 1. We have our second operand, this is our operator, which is a plus, and our second operand, which is another 1. Why did we do this? Because now we have the 3 elements separately, and we can use them to perform our operations or calculations. So we can say num1 or operand 1 equals, and now I can go in here and say go to elements, and take the first element, which is the 1, right? But I would like to recall here that in order to take the first element in programming, you use the index 0, because we always start counting from 0. So if we take a look at this list here, this I hope you can see the blue background after I highlight something with my cursor. So the blue 1 is at index 0, this one is index 1, and this element is index 2. So 0, 1, 2. And if we would like to take the first number, then we use the index 0. And something else I like to ask you to pay attention to is that this 1 here is currently a string, right? It has quotes around it. But since we are doing math, we would like to have a number, right? An integer. So let's come here and say integer of elements at index 0. So let me explain this once more. We go into our elements list, where we have the 3 separate elements. We take the first one, which is at index 0. So this will result in this thing, in a 1, which is in quotes. So this is a string. And after we have taken this 1, we are converting it into an integer in order to be able to perform our calculations on it. And once we have an integer 1, we're saving it inside of this num1 variable. Okay, let's continue. How can we take our operator? Well, we're going to use the same method. We're going to say operator is going to equal. Again, we go into our elements list, because the elements list contains all of the elements of our expression. But this time we use index 1 because this is index 0, and our operator, in this case plus, is at index 1, right? So elements of 1. And the third one is num2. That's the third element we would like to take, right? And it's going to operate the same way as the first one does. So we first go to elements, right? Elements, because it contains all the elements. And this time we would like to take the number at position 2 or index 2, right? This is the third number, but it's at index 2 because in programming we start counting from 0. And once we have it, we have the following string. However, in order to be able to perform calculations, we would like to convert it into an integer, right? So we're going to use the same method we used on line 7, int of this element, like this. Now, some of you may be asking, well, why did we convert the first and the third element to an integer, but not the second one? Well, It's actually very simple because a plus cannot be converted into an integer, right? A plus or a minus or a slash is not a number. We only want to convert to integer the numbers in our expression, which are like the first element and the third element. The second one remains a string. All right, let's come here and just print each of our elements to ensure that our program works correctly so far. Print operator and print num2. So I'm going to run my program once more. This time I'm going to use 1 times 4, let's say. And we see that on the first line we've printed 1. On the second line we've printed an asterisk, which is the sign for multiplying. And on the third line we have printed 4, which is our second number. Okay, great. So once we have these, what would we like to do? Well, now we have to start checking for the different possible operators. If we take a look at our problem description, we can notice that there are 4 possibilities here: a plus, a minus, an asterisk, or a slash. So let's start describing each of these cases. The first one is if the operator equals a plus, right? This is our first case. Then we would like to print, and let's say, what do we only want to print the result? Okay, we want to print the result. So we want to print num1, which is our first number, plus num2, right? Because we want to add them. Okay, that's our first case. Now let's move on to the second one. The second one is a minus. So else if the operator equals a minus, we want to print num1 minus num2. Print num1 minus num2. Okay, that's all. That's easy, right? And now we continue with the third case, which is an asterisk or a star for multiplying. So if the operator is an asterisk, then I would like to print num1 multiplied by num2. And the last case is a slash for dividing. So I'm going to come down here and say, actually, I'm wondering whether we need an elif or we can just use else. This one depends on whether they're going to try to input some invalid operators or not. But just to be safe, I'm going to say elif the operator equals a slash. If it's a slash, then I would like to print num1 divided by num2. Now we see that we have some problems. Okay, yes, because I have forgotten to put the slashes. Okay, sorry for this. I'm going to fix this now. Sorry, not the slashes, but the underscores. Okay, there we go. Now we don't have any more problems. Okay, so let's come here and test to see if this works. So I'm going to rerun my program and I'm going to say 1 plus 4 and we see 5. Now I'm going to try subtracting 6 minus 3 and we see 3. Then I'm going to try multiplication. 5 times 2, 10. And the last one is division. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, notice that in the problem description, they had mentioned that we have to format the result to 1 decimal place. So in order to do this, we're going to use a formatted string. The way we do this is we can actually create a separate variable for our result, just to make it cleaner. So I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to add a line beforehand, which is going to say result equals this expression. So if the operator is a plus, the result is going to equal num1 plus num2. And here, I'm going to use a formatted string. So how do we use formatted strings in Python? Well, we begin by writing the letter F for formatted. Then we put our quotes. And inside of these quotes, we can write some regular text. Or we can add a variable. So result. So we write result. And now we would like to fix it to the first decimal place. So the way we do this is we write a colon, a period, and then 1F. I know that the syntax is a little weird. It's usually easier to do this in JavaScript, but that's how Python works. So yes, you just have to remember the syntax. So this means take the result and format it to the first decimal place. And let's test this before applying it to the other cases. I'm going to rerun my program 1 plus 5, and we see 6.0, which is exactly what we had expected. Okay, so now we can apply this to all of the other cases, and I'm going to show you a cool trick here. But before that, let's actually take out the results into a separate variable for each case. So result equals num1 minus num2, and here we can just say result. In our third case, again, we have result equals num1 times num2. And in here, we just print result. And for the last case, it's basically the same. Result equals num1 divided by num2. And we come here and print result. Okay. So now I'm going to show you something cool. If you want to apply a particular change at multiple places of your code, which are currently the same, because these are exactly identical, what you can do, at least in VS Code, is you can first select the first place, right? Because we want to start writing our formatted string in here. Then for Mac, you hold Option. For Windows, I think it was Alt. And you click on all of the other places you would like to insert that change. So I'm going to click here on line 19 and on line 22. So as you can currently see, I now have inserted my cursor at multiple places, and whenever I write something, it's applied on all 3 lines, which is very cool, right? And now I can just add my formatted string. So I'm going to say F for formatted string, then insert a quote, then an opening bracket. After result, we want to close this bracket and close the string with a quote. Okay, so again, we have F for formatted, then we have quotes because this is going to be a string. And inside of this string, we're inserting our variable. That's why we're using the brackets, because we don't want to literally write result. We want to insert the answer, like the value of this result. That's why we're using those curly brackets. And we would like to also format it to the first place after the decimal point. So we say colon, period, 1F, which means format to 1 decimal place. Okay, I know that this syntax looks a bit scary, but it's nothing to be afraid of, really. It's not a very difficult concept. You just have a formatted string, you take the result and you format it to 1 place after the decimal point. That's pretty much it. So this solution works. However, we have quite a lot of repetition, as you can notice. We have the same line entered 4 times, but it's exactly the same. It's identical. So the easiest way to avoid this repetition is to just remove these lines and only write this print statement once outside of my if statement. So I'm going to come here, but now notice that I go one tab to the left. I go back to the original indentation, because now I don't want to only print this for the last case, but for every case. So whatever the sign, find the result, and then after you have gone through this entire if-else statement, print this result. It doesn't matter which case you have been in, just print the result. It's very important to keep the correct indentation here, because if you indented one tab to the right, then it's going to only be executed as a part of the last case, right? It's inside of the last case. But if you go one tab to the left, then it will be executed for every case, no matter which one it is. It will first calculate the result and then come here on line 20 and print it. So let's now run check 50. I'm going to copy it from here. And we can see that all of our tests have passed. We see all the green smiles, so our solution works correctly. That was everything for this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'm going to see you in the next one.